You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. I really like Star Wars, and today is Star Wars Day. Thank you, R2D2. And today, our dear friend Yoda has a question.
To be more resilient, supply chains need. To achieve it how?
Great question, Yoda. And for that, we have to go back to the drawing board. Okay, let me paint this real quick. Circle, a square here, a square there, then a few more touches, and there you go, the star of the show in all its magnificent glory, the Death Star. And while today's story is about the Death Star, it's very important to highlight the X-Wing. Why? Well, because the X-Wing does this. And then our friend, the Death Star, does this. And yes, a small X-Wing was able to bring down the big, mighty and shiny Death Star. And it's really much, much smaller. And you might ask yourself, how was that even possible? Well, you have to be very deep in the lore to understand that. But just to make sure, we look at the blueprint of the Death Star. And actually, it's not only us looking at the blueprint, but also one of the engineers looked at the blueprint of the Death Star while building it, and all of a sudden he saw a small label and asked himself,
I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this.
And like a ghost, his boss arrived and said,
Don't worry, we're all together.
And like a ghost, he vanished again. And because it was fine, our engineer just did something else and moved on. And that's why you don't trust engineers. Yeah, I get it. That's a very nice story. But what has any of that to do with supply chains? Well, I'm glad you asked. But before we continue, listen to Yoda.
Subscribe to YouTube you will. Strong the force there is.
Thank you, Yoda. Because there are a lot of global companies out there. And they often have a lot of smaller suppliers. And these suppliers are smaller than our big and mighty corporation. In fact, they are much, much smaller. But when the small corporation does this, the production line of the big corporation and also their revenue will do this. Our big and mighty corporation might be somewhere in Europe. And most of the first-tier suppliers might actually also be in Europe. But then there are others that are somewhere else. And every supplier has suppliers, and they might be somewhere completely different again. And then they have suppliers, and they might again be somewhere totally different, or there might be another supplier they already work with somewhere in the supply chain. So what I want to say is, supply chains are very complex and visibility is an issue. And now our story comes full circle, because in order to be better in managing the supply chain surface, supply chain leaders have to do a much better job in convincing the engineers to work together to find good solutions with existing materials for new products. And here's an example of what I mean by that. This is a vegan butter we buy. And as you can see on the marketing, they have different lids for different types of vegan butter they produce. Well, that is a thing of the past, because as you can see here, our dear friend Yoda is showcasing one of the vegan butters they are having right now in the stores for sale. And you can see that the lid is inherently different. Instead of having different colors, it now is golden and only the label is different, which makes the supply chain less complex. On a tier 1 level, it might still be the same supplier, but he needs less colors to source, which means he limits probably the portfolio of either his tier 2 or tier 3 suppliers. And this also makes the production process just so much more comfortable. And they can reuse this solution now for any new product they launch into the market. And they always have a good looking lid because golden is very shiny. And to get to a point where you are able to manage BOM diversity more efficiently, you need to do a couple of things. First, you have to understand where your suppliers are. Then you have to understand which products you are sourcing from them. And all of that is not very easy and requires a lot of data crunching and data harmonization. And then in addition to all of that, you need somebody with engineering experience and a supply chain view to be the middleman between your desires and the desires of the engineer, who's able to balancing out where innovation might be harmed if not choosing a new product, and where it's good to choose actually an old product to make it easier for production and supply chain in general. And we all know supply chains want to be more strategic. Well, this is really strategic and probably brings you to the board level where supply chain belongs. And it might look like a long and daunting way, but actually digitalization will help. So why not start today? R2D2, the video's over. Yeah, I know. But we learned a great lesson around engineering and supply chain management and how we can collaborate. If you have anything to add here, for example, how digitalization can help, just leave a comment. Subscribe while you're at YouTube or LinkedIn or TikTok. That would be great. And otherwise, all I have to say, may the 4th be with you.